Alrighty guys, the day is upon us. The devil has dropped on Yugioh and she's hot. Who would have thought that Yugioh would have turned this absolute king of all demons, or what some should say would be the most evil servant of all time, into a hot waifu? I could have never seen this coming, but in all seriousness, you better strap in and get ready because this is going to be a long one. Draco is not only a top 5 servant releasing this year, I think she is a top servant in the game, and she's bringing a fun new class that is definitely not broken at all whatsoever. It's a very fair and balanced class that definitely will not let you just almost bypass like 80% of the game. You know, it definitely would not do that. Yugioh and dropping a new broken class, they would never do such a thing. So strap in, get comfortable, like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let's just start diving into her kit, starting off with her hits and her new classing. So Draco is bringing the beast class into the game. And we know that each of the different beast classings function differently. They announced this when they actually released Draco, that whenever they did do another beast class servant, and we have proof of this with Space Yugioh, they would function differently. And Draco definitely got the bigger end of the stick on this one because she is functionally super effective against all of the main classes: your sabers, your archers, your lancers, your casters, your riders, your assassins, and your zerks. They're all fish food for Draco. They are all free eats. Nom nom nom, eat them up, give me more. She's at the Golden Corral buffet begging for more characters on her plate, which already functionally means that she's kind of like the best version of a berserker you could ever get, because she's like, not only am I not taking a whole lot of damage, but I also just get to do all this damage for free, which is just already in and of itself the insane foundation for why this character is so good. Realistically, her kit could have been super simple and straightforward, which kind of technically it is. But even if it was just the most basic things of all time, if it was just like, oh, 30% battery, here's an attack buff, and I don't know, here's a guts, she would still be really good off the merits that it's like, well, it's a servant you can functionally bring to like 75% of the game, and she's gonna do really well. And thankfully, they didn't just give her a basic kit, they just slathered her full of really good effects. But that's just kind of where we're getting started on that. Her hits, if we actually want to look at those, this is either going to be a pro or con for some people. I find it to be a little bit annoying at times because she is rocking a triple buster deck as an art servant. But again, because she can just do so much damage to pretty much every servant in the game functionally, the triple buster deck might as well be like an NP turn for her, because you can just delete people with a Buster Brave Chain from Draco. Like, she does so much damage with these. She hits so incredibly hard. And it just almost makes you forget about the fact that she is an art servant in general. And thankfully, even though you can't do as frequent arch chains as you would like with other servants, especially arts single target characters that might have 2 or 3 arts cards in their deck, because of how Castoria functions and because of how Proto Merlin functions, giving NP immediately with their batteries and NP over time with Proto Merlin's NP, you're never really going to be in a bad situation with Draco. And again, they really gave her all the fixings in her kit. So it's like, well, even if you don't have all of that nonsense up, she's still going to be fine on the NP department, as you'll see in the background gameplay for this video. But before we get into her proper skills, we have to look at her passive skills, because the most important thing over here is that, sure, she has a pretty much guaranteed debuff success rate, so already kind of decent on its own. But if they ever just wanted to go back and say, you know what, we're just gonna give her some extra debuffs on some of her skills. I mean, she already has stuff like burn and stuff along those lines that she could slap on people. But if they ever want to go back and buff any of these skills and give her any type of debuff effect at all whatsoever, she will be very well positioned, so to speak, to guarantee that any debuffs that she's going to be throwing at the enemy are guaranteed to stick no matter what, unless they are just straight up debuff immune, which, I mean, to be fair, a couple of bosses do have that in the game. You know, it pops up every now and then. But the more important thing that's going to be notable for a lot of other players is the fact that she has 12% passive crit damage, 10% from Authority of the Beast C, and 2% from Independent Manifestation E, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when we start moving into her kit, starting off with Skill 1, Number of the Beast C, you will see that this actually adds into another crit buff she has, 30% for 6 times, and it doesn't run off based off turn. So even though it has a 7-turn cooldown, you are going to basically get all 6 of those crits that have 46% crit damage, not to also mention any other crit buffs you want to slap on her with, say, somebody like Proto Merlin. But then she's also giving herself 10% NP regen for 6 turns, so functionally for free, at least just off this skill alone, she will have 10% NP incoming every single turn. For every turn this skill is going to be up, and it'll be down for 1 turn, and then she has 1,000 damage cut for 6 hits as well. which is also really nice at helping her be pretty tanky. You can almost just look at this as a nice little warm-up introduction to Draco. You know, she's got a little bit of sustainability with her NP regen, is always just going to be getting some nice NP to kind of offset the fact that she does not have as many hearts cards. Those crits are really going to be biting, and she's going to be a little tanky. But the second skill is where things start to get a little funky. I'm not even going to try to pronounce those first two words.
Aurea Poculum.
I'm just going to call it Golden Grail Sea, and there's not a thing you can do about it. What this is doing is it's going to be sealing all enemy skills for 1 turn, hitting them with a 5k burn for 3 turns, giving herself not a 20, not a 30, but a 40% attack buff for 3 turns, which, mind you, things like that are usually reserved for, say, monstrous strength, and those have some kind of restriction on them. Maybe it's hit-based or it's only 2 turns. Something along those lines. But no, she just straight up gets 40% attack for 3 turns, which is redonkulous. And then she gives herself the Holding Holy Grail status for 3 turns. And note, this is neither a buff nor debuff, so it interacts really weird when your bosses are trying to like remove stuff from you. So they're trying to protect her from stuff like that, so she doesn't just kind of become a useless servant if she does not have that Holding Holy Grail buff active. But we're not going to talk about that just yet. That's going to tie more into her third skill. All of the other effects on here are incredibly strong. Like, I do not have to tell you why a servant that is functionally just a free berserker on 75% of the game, getting 46% crit damage and a 40% attack buff is already incredibly good. But also, sealing all enemy skills for 1 turn is just such nice team utility, because one thing, spoiler alert, that Draco does not have is a way to get around, say, stuff like dodges or invincibilities. So what if you just 5-head, don't let them ever use those skills? What if you just say, sorry buddy, no protection for you, I'm just gonna have to hit you with my big bungus NP, and as we've also established, her really high damage buster cards, and they can't do anything about it. They can't do anything to protect themselves or buff themselves for that turn. Very nice utility, because it's something that Castoria nor Lady Avalon offer, and those are going to be the main characters you're using with Draco. You can also again use people like Tamamo. I think being able to spam these absolutely nutty skills is always going to be an absolute delight. The burn isn't the biggest thing. If you do have, say, stuff like Honey Lake, the CE that gives you Pierce Invul and the burn power mod on that CE, that can actually be really good, because again, it helps her out a little bit with not being able to get around defensive buffs on the enemy, and it's also really good because now you have an additional power mod on top of the 2 that she already has. Well, technically 3 that she has when we look at her NP, but then you just get a 4th one for free, so you're just stacking damage on damage on damage on damage on damage. And it is a really good CE to use with her, not just for the power mod, but again, that Pierce invincibility allowing her to get around invul buffs and get around dodge buffs is super huge for Draco, because spoiler alert, she does have Pierce defense, so then she's able to pretty much get around any defensive buffs that an enemy would have, and then they can just functionally have to sit down, get on their knees, and pray to Draco that they don't kill her, but she's also the devil, so they're probably just going to get death anyway. Finally, moving over to her third skill, 7 Beast Crown C. This is why you absolutely, and do not ever do this, you have to use the second skill before the third skill, alright? Because everything on this skill, aside from the buff removal resistance of 100% for 1 time that lasts for 3 turns, all comes from the Holding Holy Grail status. Do not use these skills out of order, because you will be missing out on it. I gotta take a breath for this one. 40% Dragon Power mod, 40% Roman Power mod, 10 stars every single turn, 20% healing rate while she has this buff, and 20% additional NP every single turn for 3 turns, while also bypassing defense for 3 turns. And did I also mention that she just has 1 debuff immunity that is not turn-based, so it'll just stick there even after this skill expires. Suffice to say, she is getting quite a lot, and all of these effects are really good. Dragon is a fairly common servant and random free quest enemy that you will encounter. Roman might seem bad, but we actually get a command code during the event that lets you slap Roman power mod on the enemy, so functionally your Draco can always have the Roman power mod up. Remember how I said she's doing really good crits? Well, she's also regenning 10 stars every turn for 3 turns. That's not factoring in 20, 30s you might have on your supports, or Lady Avalon firing her NP, or whatever just random servant you want to throw in there with Draco. Debuff immunity for 1 time means any stun, charm, random, just gobbledygook that the enemy wants to do to you, it's just gonna whiff. Pierce defense is super nice. Again, if you have a Pierce Invul CE, so then she could just get around anything and can't be stopped by anybody. The NP every single turn stacks with her first skill, so she gets 30% NP every single turn. So while she doesn't have a traditional battery, you can still actually use her in farming setups, because by wave 3, just off the merit of doing nothing, and if you use no other skills on her, she'll still be sitting at 60% NP, not including the monoloading you could do to give her an additional 20%. And again, that's just saying that you were a dummy and didn't give your Draco any other buffs. You know, Castoria gives 30% to the entire party, Lady Avalon gives 20% to the entire party, Castoria also has a 20% targetable thing. You get where I'm going with this. It's really, really nice. And it's all insulated by the fact that she has 100% buff removal resistance for one time. So even though she has all this power concentrated in these skills, you would think, well, there are so many bosses that remove all of our buffs because Castoria is so broken and they have no way to get around her solemn defense. Slap you in the face, dummy. That's not going to work on Draco. Sure, your Castoria with her pathetic supporting abilities will get all of her stuff removed and she'll probably get blown up by the boss, and Lady Avalon will be doing her best, but is also going to get butt blasted into oblivion. But not Draco. She's just going to say,
these buffs are all mine, baby.
And she's not letting go of them. At least for the first instance. If the boss has multiple buff removal resistance ways, that would be a little tragic for her. But usually the bosses aren't just removing your buffs every single turn, unless it's like the Raid Ivan that we never got over here on the NA side of things, like the Lost Belt 1 guy who loves to spam that ability, or those like random Lost Belt 4 Divine Dragons that love to just do the heavenly tuning and remove all of your stuff. Unless it's like one of these particular enemies who Draco probably should have already turned into paste already, you're gonna be fine. And funny enough, one of those guys is a dragon, so they're extra dead in the face of Draco. Moving over to her NP, it is super basic. So do you remember how I said that her beast class typing basically says that she's super effective against the 7 main classes? You do, right? Because you don't have short-term memory. Well, her NP is very basic. What it does is very simple. It gives her a power mod against 7 Knight class servant enemies. So again, any Saber, Archer, Lancer, Rider, Assassin, Caster, or Zerg that also happens to be a servant is gonna get sent into the stratosphere. And this is why you can see me using Draco in the background for this gameplay, and she could just be hitting over 1,000,000 damage without any event power mod bonus, without no Oberon support, none of that nonsense. She just does a lot of damage because you can overlay a lot of these different power mods on her very, very quickly. Now, when I was talking to a friend when Draco came out, they were like, she's kind of hard carried by her beast class typing though. And I was like, yeah, if she wasn't a beast class, I mean, sure, it wouldn't be as good, but guess what? She is a beast class. There's no change in that. And so she's bonkers. She just does a lot of damage. Even her bond CE is actually pretty good, which is important to note because of the whole Grand Servant update we're going to be getting. It gives her, for free, 30% NP damage, which already offer it is disgusting because she's already doing a lot of damage. She already hits really hard. So what if she just hit a little bit harder? And then they gave her an on-attack buff that while she has her second skill up, she has that holding Holy Grail status, she has a 40% chance to give herself, I don't know, 10% more NP damage for 3 turns. So just screw it. You do a Brave Chain, you might get really lucky. You might, I mean, it's not exactly a coin toss, but you win the coin toss 3 times and bada boom, bada bing, 30% more NP damage. You now have 70% NP damage. Oh, look, is that Oberon knocking on the door? He would like to join the team comp because now he can make Draco do obscene amounts of damage. I mean, this servant does one thing and they do it incredibly well, and that is they hit, and they hit really, really hard. And they are very good at being able to ensure that they're going to be able to do those hits because they're saying, you can't take my buffs, you're just gonna have to take this damage. There's no way out of it.
That don't work. There's no way out of this one. You're done.
As far as possible weaknesses for Draco are concerned, and I can say this as a proficient NP1 Draco user myself, I can tell you all the ins and outs. Realistically, the only things that stop this character are bosses that are spamming things like invincibility or dodge, and you have not prepared accordingly. You have not given her something with, say, pierce invincibility or sure hit, because if you know you're going into a boss that's going to be spamming these defensive buffs, you gotta give her something that allows her to just hit the enemies really hard, because then you're just not letting her do her job. But what's this? Fortunately, like I mentioned earlier, play back the tape. The CE that gives gives you Pierce Invul and the Burn Power mod on that CE. Honey Lake is absolutely broken with this servant because, again, not only does it give them Pierce Invul, so they can't be stopped by invincibilities or dodges, they already have Pierce Defense, so functionally, the three main ways that bosses are going to keep themselves alive don't do anything, and oh, look at that, now I have a power mod against you being burned as well, which is guaranteed to stick because, oh yes, I forgot, I have 500% debuff boosting, so that burn is going to stick no matter what. The other weakness you'll see kind of parroted when talking about Draco is that, well, isn't she really weak when she's not fighting a 7 main class servant? And I'm here to tell you, no, that's not the case. Sure, she does actually lose out on the power mod, but her damage is actually still fairly good, because remember, she's still super effective against them, and all of her other power mods are still technically live. And she's still going to be critting like an absolute demon. Where I think Draco starts to struggle is if you bring her into extra class fights, because not only are those not possible to be 7 main class servants, because I mean, you're fighting like Ruler Jean or something. She's not going to turn into a saber or something off willy-nilly. I guess unless we're playing something like Fate Extella where she actually uses La Pucelle, but we don't live in that timeline. But on top of losing the power mod for those guys, she's also not super effective against them, so she's going in like super type neutral against them. Now, I'm not saying that she can't beat those fights. Hear me and hear me clearly, if you are dedicated enough, your Draco will get in there and will smack anybody to Kingdom Come. It's just going to be a lot harder when you take away her main class advantage, the main thing that is really pushing this servant, and the main power mod that makes her exceptionally good. I mean, go figure. If you bring Gilgamesh against a Lancer that is not a servant, he's probably also going to struggle. If you bring Yasugi Kenshin against an Avenger that is not man attribute, she's probably also going to struggle. If we're bringing Zertoria against a Foreigner that does not meet any of her power mods, which granted that one is a little bit hard because most Foreigners are threats to humanity, but for this example, if we're trying to take her at her absolute worst, yeah, a lot of servants are going to struggle in those scenarios. Yeah, like, no duh. You bring a servant against a fight where they have none of their power mods and they are at type disadvantage, it's probably not going to go super well for them. But unlike a lot of those other servants, it's really hard for me to paint that as a negative when she is effective against, again, the 7 main classes, and if those guys happen to be a servant, a dragon, debuffable because again of the burn power mod, or are Roman / you got the command code for slapping on the Romans onto enemies, they're just going to get obliterated. They're toast, they're gone, they're obliterated, eviscerated, they're not in this dimension anymore. They have been absolutely gobbled up by this demon lady over here. So is she worth summoning for? I mean, I thought I made a pretty good case for her in this video. Do you want to turn your enemies into paste? Nod your head yes. Yeah, nod, you do want to turn your enemies into paste, then this character's for you. Do you want somebody that can really help you out on those 90++ nodes because you just don't have a single target that can take out these pesky large bosses? Nod your head yes, because you do want that. Then yeah, Draco's going to be really good for that. Realistically, the only reason Summer Castoria as a servant is beating out Draco in terms of ranking is that, well, she's a berserker, so she could actually be used against someone like, say, those 90++ nodes, where it's like a ruler that might be chaotic or something, so she has power mod against them. Or no, hers is divine, but you get what I'm saying. I've been so gassed up on the Draco over here, I got my power mods all mixed up, but yeah, it's just generally that Zertoria is going to be a little bit more useful. I mean, also the immediate battery is going to be very, very strong. I mean, I just did a video on this like 2 weeks ago. You can list all the comparisons in that video if you want to really find out who's better from a meta perspective. But I also think at this point, we're talking about servants that are so obscenely broken that if you have Draco or you save for Zertoria, you're probably going to be fine either way. They're both going to turn the enemies into nothingness. They're not going to exist on this Earth or any parallel Earth. Their descendants in different timelines are going to be talking about the absolute spanking handed to them by Draco, and she comes from a really baller event. If this video and her performance doesn't convince you, then at least read the event and then you'll be like, oh, okay, I know what ZTL was talking about. He was spitting with this one. So yeah, absolutely worth going for. I mean, she even has good longevity because her bond CE is really good. And if they're going to allow us to turn some of these extra class servants into grand servants, which Draco might be one of the few that I don't think realistically lore-wise they should be able to do, because a grand beast, while it sounds really cool on paper, probably should not be allowed, but you guys know FGO. Eventually, even if they don't let you do it initially, they're gonna let you do it at some point. So yeah, she even scales really well with future updates that we're like 2 years out from. So Just a phenomenal servant. I can't sing her praises any more than I've already done in this video. Any crack she might have is like, again, can't get her on defensive buffs, but oh no, if only there was any good Pierce invincibility CEs in the game, especially, I mean, even outside of Honey Lake. We have good Pierce Invul CEs, so yeah, oh no, there's no good Pierce invincibility CEs. Oh my goodness. So on that note, let me know in the comment section down below if you have pulled for or are pulling for Draco, and make sure you use this video as a summoning catalyst, as I will bless any and all summons for Mommy Draco over here, because I absolutely adore this servant. They are so much fun to use. They are such a banger character in their event. There's just really nothing that I hold against them at all whatsoever. They were absolutely cooking in the kitchen with this one. But if you found this video to be informative, entertaining, or maybe you just like watching FGO related content, I put these videos out every single day. Maybe not this highly edited, of course, but we save those for special occasions. But go ahead and anyway drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, as these do come out every single day. We have a Discord down in the description down below if you want to talk about FGO with other players. We got a Nikkei chat, a Dokkan chat, a Bleach Brave Souls chat that gets posted in like once a month or something, but hey, it's still there. There's also a super secret saucy channel for my Patreons where they get to recommend videos for Fridays, which is usually the Low Star Legends, but hey, if they want to yell at me to record something else, that's also perfectly fine. And if you want to be a part of that chat and influencing what gets released on Fridays, make sure you go down to that Patreon down in the description down below and join up. But again, don't feel pressured to do so. It's only there for people that want to go that extra mile. Finally, I stream every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, starting at about 6 p.m. Central, and that is going to be going live on the Twitch down in the description down below and over here on the YouTube. It's cultivated to your viewing experience. Do you like Twitch's chat better, or do you like the mid-YouTube chat better? I'll let you decide, and I will multi-stream on both for your viewing pleasure. But with all that being said, I think I have yapped, rambled, and praised Draco enough in this video, so I will catch you guys in the next video. Have yourselves a nice day, and the best of luck on your polls. Bye!